So I want to open the covered Achsanya, as they say. I want to say thank you to Rabbi Shomve Halberstam, who I know pretty much since the day he was born. And I think I was in Shalom Zacha. My family and my wife's side were very close to his family. And he's even in our wedding album, but I wasn't going to take it out of the safe to show you guys because it's not about him, it's about the Rebbetzin. Rabbi Shaf, I remember as a little kid as well. Who doesn't? And I used to be actually friendly with his father, and I helped him in some of the things that he used to be involved. That all had to do with Shleimus Haaretz and Shleimus HaTorah, but mostly he was very, very active in the whole arena of Yehudi mainly. So, and I know him also pretty much from when he came to New York. Well, I came to New York, which is basically about 50 years ago. It's my honor and pleasure to hang out a little bit with you guys. It's not a Farbrengen. I'm not a mashpia, I'm not a rabbi, and nothing like that. And I'd like to give a little short introduction about my style and about myself. So, like I said, I'm not a mashpia or anything like that, but I hope by the stories that I will tell, the bechein, and what you can take as a lesson, what we can all take as a lesson, is going to be obvious and I wouldn't have to explain it. My basic idea is so people can have an understanding of how much appreciation we owe to the Rebbetzin for practically giving us the Rebbe from literally like day one to the last day. And there's a saying in English that behind every woman there's a strong man. In this case, it also goes the other way around, that behind a person like the Rebbe, there's a strong woman like the Rebbetzin, who literally devoted her entire life, every minute of her life, to be there for the Rebbe. So we owe her a lot of thanks. Now, the Rebbetzin would not be excited if she knew I was sitting and talking about her. So we have a little bit of a shtickle dilemma where the Rebbe explained, as Rabbi Halberstam explained in the introduction, V'chayit and Libe, we should learn from the Rebbetzin and so forth. And today there's maybe 20,000 girls, Ken Yerbut, that are named after the Rebbetzin. And actually just today, I heard a little part of what the Rebbe spoke during Shevat, that the people who are named after, that the Rebbe spoke at a later date, that the people who are named after the Rebbetzin, they kind of continue her, almost her life, and so forth and so forth. So it's important, I think, that we have a shtickle idea about the Rebbetzin. Some of your moms, the younger kids, the moms maybe already could be Chaim Mushkes because it's 36 years ago. You have sisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, not nephews. In any case, so my basic point is to explain a little bit my understanding. Now, I don't give any shot, drush, remez, or soid. I try to stay away from it. I don't understand or say whether it's stories about the Rebbe or the Rebbetzin, but somehow indirectly it comes out as if I have a mevines, or I'm giving a shot, or I think it was done because of this or of that. All of this is just my own ideas, literally in my oilam cotton, in my small mind. And like the introduction, I think in the Minchas Chinuch, is when you read his counting the mitzvahs, he says, in the Akdama, he says, it looks like I'm giving a tam on the chukim, the mishpatim. But he says, maybe ulai b'derech hefsher, it's one of the 100 or 1,000 reasons, whatever, that the Eibishter had why he gave a certain mitzvah. So I don't want to compare myself to him, but what I'm saying is, if it sounds like I'm giving a pshat or anything like that, it's my own little 2 cents, and you can take it however you want. Now, the first question I'm usually being asked, which all of you guys are thinking, is how does it happen that a person becomes like an assistant or a mishores? Some people use the Hebrew word mashbak to the Rebbetzin. So I'll be very, very bekitzer so you can have a basic understanding who is speaking to you. So I came to New York when I was 15 years old in Summer Lamed Gimel. A lot of people came from all over the world, mostly from Israel. Lamed Daled was Shnas Hakel, so a lot of people came, and most of them ended up staying. But in any case, so unfortunately, I wasn't such a big masmid, unlike you guys, because I could see on your faces you're real masmidim. And I wasn't one of those. So after being in Morristown for, I think, a year and a half to 2, I wasn't very excited about being to Morristown, because coming from France, from the little shtetl, winding up in Morristown, I wanted to come to 7th Avenue. I wanted to come to New York. I wanted to come to the Rebbe. And I wound up in Morristown. We may be coming once a month. There wasn't that many Farbrengens as in the later years. So we wound up coming in basically on Shabbos Mevorchim and few other times. So you feel literally that you're mamish out of town. That whole city is a little bit of a little shtetl to begin with, and you felt completely out of place. But to make a long story short, since I wasn't unfortunately, such a big masmid, and So eventually I wound up in New York. I got into a yeshiva in New York, but didn't become a masmid there either. So I started to kind of become a macher in 770. And basically, I would do everything that was needed to be done in 770, from setting up the Verbringens, from it was called the Vada Masada, setting up the Verbringens, the rallies. I was involved like Boeing Parade, everything and anything that was happening in 770, I had my finger or my hand in it. Eventually, at some point, they started to ask me if I wanted to become what they call the Heusbacher or the helper to the Rebbetzin, because they needed to replace the people who had got married or whatever. I kind of pushed it up for a while, but at the end I said yes. But before that, I was picked as the candidate. Apparently, it came all the way from the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin and the Beis Rav that they wanted someone to sleep in 770. So I ended up actually sleeping in 770. The official guy sleeps in 770. So it was like I was the right glove because I was already the macher anyways. So I ended up there. And I actually used to sleep in, I'm sure all the guys have seen already, the Cheder HaShidurim or WLCC, which is the Rabbi Halberstam's father who established that and is still there now. So way back, there was a little partition dividing. So it was kind of created a little bedroom. From that same teeny tiny room that is Mamish Adalad Al Dalad, Rabbi Hecht used to broadcast or translate the Verbringens. There was a little window there. You can see the downstairs of 770. So he would sit there and you can see what's going on. And Rabbi Weinberg would also say, Shul Matanya from the same room. But in any case, so I was already sleeping in 770. I was kind of the guy we put their eyes that I'm going to be the next one taking over to be like the helper to the Rebbetzin. Anyway, so that's basically how it went after me saying no, no, no. At some point, I realized it's pretty obvious that I'm not going to be full-time sitting in yeshiva. And I'm not becoming Rosh Yeshiva the way my father wanted me to. That was pretty clear to me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to devote my life to, to helping the Rebbetzin. I knew that meant no camp. I was still young enough to go to camp as a staff, madrich or whatever. No merkes shliches, because you have to be around. So I understood that all came in a package deal. You're always going to be around 770 and around, the Rebbetzин's house, and you're going to be here. You can't travel or whatever. But I decided I'm going to devote my life to this. So the funniest thing was when I made that decision, it was a month before Pesach, and I didn't even discuss it with the people who were pushing me the whole time, which is Rabbi Kvinsky, Rebbe Halberstam. I just one day woke up and I said, okay, this is it, I'm going to do it. So I actually called up Rabbi Halberstam, meaning Shon Halberstam's mom, and I asked for the Rebbetzins number. She didn't even ask me why I needed it. She just gave it to me because I was that type of guy, right? That if I'm asking, I need to have it or whatever. She told me the number. Don't get your pen because I'm not going to repeat it to you. And Lubavitch Ungerman has the number right now, so don't even try. But if you win the lottery, he says you can always call him at that special number, 756-8463. In any case, I know it's being recorded, so now everybody's going to call there, right? So anyways, so I called the Rebbetzin, and I said, this is all in Yiddish. I'm going to go very quickly, otherwise we can sit here for 10 hours. I said, I'm the bacher that's supposed to come work for you. When can I come over? She almost interrupts. She says, yes, I know, because she knew apparently that it was in the pipeline. And also, the Rebbetzin had met me many times before, because when she used to come to pick up her sister, who lived upstairs in 770, Chana Gorari, Rashak's wife, when she came to pick her up, she came to bring her back. 90% of the time, I'm always there. I'm hanging out what you call on the Chabad Plaza, usually in short sleeves without a hat because I'm a macher. Machers don't go with hats and long jackets and sleeves. So I'm a guy with the hands on. So the Rebbetzin can pinpoint me in a crowd, whatever. So they always say, a Dankach, a Grayson Dank, or whatever. I open the door, close the door, whatever. So the Rebbetzin kind of knew that it was in the pipeline, and I assumed that Rabbi Kvinsky told her, yeah, sooner or later he's going to find somebody for her. But it was getting close to Pesach. I can imagine she was a little bit panicked already. In any case, so she said, you can come over whenever it's convenient for you. With a show of hands, how many of you guys speak basic Yiddish? Okay, not bad. Hopefully it gets better as you go, as you get older. So she said, if it's convenient for you, whenever it's convenient, if you want, you can come over now. I said, yeah, I'll be there in a few minutes. The Rebbe was already in 770, I knew that. And she said, I'll leave the door kind of open for you. She's going to push in a pin so the door stays open. So, so I walked there, and in my mind, I mean, I'd seen the Rebbetzin many times, but it's not the same. You show up to her house and it's just you and the Rebbetzin, as they say, in the Zoylash, and Iru Bil Chidoihi, it's just you and the Eibishter, it's just you and the Rebbetzin, it's different. And in parentheses, I should say, 1 year I was still in Yechidus. When the Rebbe said Bochurim in Yechidus, I was still totally in Yeshiva, and I got it settled to get into Yechidus. So once I'm like facing the Rebbetzin in her kitchen, it's like, wow, this is like really scary, and like I was in awe. Anyways, like I said, it was a month before Pesach. The Rebbetzin prepared like a Negelwasser schissel with a sponge, and she said, if it's not too hard, then you can, and please. And I think she had some kind of a step stool. I don't remember. This is almost 47, 48, whatever, 47 years ago, 46 years ago. And she said, if I could wash the tiles in the kitchen. Part of the reason I said the whole time that I didn't want to take kind of the job is because they explained to me, sometimes you pay her bills in Kingston, you pick up something on Kingston. Sometimes the Rebbetzin wants to go for a drive, you go with her, or you have to watch the car for her. She used to drive. So you have to watch the car for her because there's no parking in New York, things like that. You bring things from 770 to the house, from the house to 770, something for the Rebbe, from 770 to the Rebbetzin, things like that. But it wasn't real work. I'm the type of guy you want to put on a wall, take down a wall. I know these days you got to be careful saying that, but I helped build 770 actually, just so you know. With these 10 fingers, helped build 770, and just so you know, they didn't even give a sandwich. So I came in the summer. Yeshiva doesn't start till Cheshvan, until I got myself into Morristown, because I came without having a yeshiva agreed to accept a big lamdan like me. So I only got into Cheshvan. So when I came in the middle of the summer, they literally were barely starting to build the final and the last extension. So I actually built the shul. But in any case, so that was part of the reason I said no. But I was so happy that I was proven wrong. There was actual real work. And when I kind of washed the tiles, it almost changed colors. I was so excited. Turned out to be that was the only real physical job I did in all the years I was there. And the longer I was there, the more I almost had to argue with the Rebbetzin over what I can or cannot do. Because anything she can do herself or her maid, she had a maid that would come a couple of times a week. The maid was older than the Rebbetzin, imagine that. So anything that the Rebbetzin can do or the maid can do, she would not let me do. It's almost had to argue with her. I'll try to get into it, how this developed as time went. But I want to try to go a little bit with the Seder. So the Rebbetzin explained me what to do, and she says, if you need me, this is all in Yiddish. If you need me, you can call out Schnell son, but in Yiddish, when you think about it, it's like a bedaft man kann rufen. But rufen also almost insinuates you can shout like Schnell son, like get down here, because she said like I'm going to be upstairs. You can either ring the bell on the back door there by the stairs of going the back door, not the ones you see when you go there, or you see the Rebbe going up and down by davening. In the back, there's another staircase, excuse me, and there's a bell there. So in the Yemei Ha'or, in the Shnei Ha'or, in the real days of Crown Heights, the bell was designed for the masters to call their servants. Unfortunately, in Sapcha Yotzres, the world went upside down, and the Rebbetzin told me if I need her, I can ring the bell or call out for her. And I'm saying, okay, please go. I mean, I'm like, my chest is about to explode. I'm saying, yeah, please go upstairs. I'm sure to call you if I need something. So she opened the refrigerator. She says, help stop the refrigerator. I think she got a little bit color in the face. She got a little bit embarrassed that the refrigerator was completely empty, because both of them, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, barely eat. And she wasn't prepared that a big guest like me is going to show up, right? So she didn't have anything in the fridge. But she made it up years later. She always made sure everything I liked was in the fridge. She was like a Bobby to me. And helped us out to the fridge. The only thing I remember there was milk and some seltzer. But she said, do you like milk? I said, yeah. Do you like seltzer? I said, yes. And I don't want to go into all the details because, like I said, we can sit for 10 hours. And she told me, if I need her, I could call for her. She'll come down if I need anything. And she started to take like one little step to go upstairs. And she says, Oi, chashinish vergessen. I almost forgot. And I'm saying, what now? And she says, you should keep track of the hours you like devote for us. I don't think she used the word arbeit, which means like work or avoid. She says, at the side was your needs door, something like the time you use for us. She said us. When I heard that, and for Zeit zu Zeit, from time to time, I'm going to pay you. When I heard that, I had a complete meltdown, because in my mind, I'm here because you're the Rebbe's wife, you're Rebbetzin Shneil's son. I'm not here because I'm looking for work, because I'm a super busy guy in 770. I'm here because I want to help you. I'm not looking for work. I'm not looking to get paid. I don't know if insulted, but he's like, it can be, this is not real. So before she even finished saying that, I said, now you have to remember, I was like 17 at the time, but either way, I said, entschuldigt mir sehr, mir hat mir nicht gesagt, dass geht mir bezahlen. Geht mir bezahlen, gehe ich weg. And I stopped for a second. I see some of you guys are smiling because you speak Yiddish. I said, und ich komme nicht zurück. I said, if you want to pay me, then I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. In other words, it's not like I'm going to go in the driveway, catch some fresh air and recover from the shock, and I'm going to come back and it's going to be all good. I said, if I'm leaving and I'm not coming back. Before I even finished saying that, the Rebbetzin turned complete color. She interrupted me and she says, like with her hand, wegen dem nicht stopping was zu reden. And I'm still talking, so we're kind of talking over each other. And she repeated like twice. It's not negotiable, there's nothing what to talk about. In other words, it's my way or the highway. And I didn't know what to say. I was just completely lost for words. And I'm not a guy who's lost for words, as you can tell most probably by now, and you can tell as we go on. So when you learn Chitas Simir Tashem and you think of the Osain, you'll understand the position I was in. I didn't know what to say. So I realized I had to say something. So I said, okay, you know what? If you want to keep track of the money, it's fine. I'm not keeping track of anything or something. She says, okay. Like she says, like she didn't say it, but it sounded like, I got your number, Notik. I see what I'm dealing with. Okay, I'll keep track and everything. To jump way ahead, so sometimes the Rebbetzin had certain cheshbonos when she would pay me. She always paid me when I worked for her, all the years. Usually she would give me money. She would have a bunch of money laid out on the table to pay bills on Kingston most of the time. And then there was also a side money for me. Das ist für euch nichts Gesundheit. But sometimes she in her cheshbon, she had to pay me, like payroll time rolled around and she didn't. I don't know if it was once a month. I have no idea. And she says, I don't want you to think that I forgot, but I didn't have a chance to go to the bank. Before she finishes, I said, I just look at her and I say, yeah? Like we agreed that we're not going to discuss money. She says, okay. Jumping a little bit further, at some point, I was also working for a sister in 770 for Chana Gurari. And they both decided, so again, like I said before, they're taking care of me like this little, I wasn't an orphan, now I am. I wasn't an orphan, but basically my parents didn't have a phone in the house even. They didn't have 2 pennies to scratch together anyways, and it didn't take a lot for the Rebbetzin to realize that. So at some point, both of them made kind of a yad achas. They both agreed that they're going to save money to buy me a winter coat. So I was happy I didn't have to hear about the money and be embarrassed to take the money. Time goes by. The bank was, I don't want to say the piggy bank, but the bank was full. There's enough money to buy a coat. And the Rebbetzin said, they're going to take me to Manhattan. They're going to take me to Manhattan to buy a coat. This was a really big one. Hardly anyone knew I was working for the Rebbetzin. I kept it as quiet as I can. But trust me, if I showed up with 2 elegant aristocratic bobbies in Macy's, I think she used to shop for herself and the Rebbe, and I think even in Sears and Bloomingdale's. These were the stores. I never heard of these stores in my life before. And I was in a really bad place. I said, I don't want to disturb you. She says, nein, es ist unser Vergnügen, my Vergnügen, unser Vergnügen. And I knew I had to get out of it because that's like loyal of Loyove. I'm not going to show up with the Rebbe in Manhattan trying on coats. Can you just imagine? So I said, I promise you I'm going to get a coat in a place that you can give it back. And if you don't like it, I'll give it back. I'll buy it in a place you could be back. She says, you sure? It's not a tirche, it's mamish a Vergnügen. She insisted. I said, nein, ich sage euch zu, also ich kaufen, was wilt, und ich das Weisen vor uns, und betrachten nicht, dass sie die schöne Sache, die richtige Sache, oder das zurückgeben, like if you don't like it, you don't think it's right, like you're talking to your buddy, Anyways, so finally, Baruch Hashem, that went okay. Anyways, talking about money, the Rebbetzin was super. I'm going to go just tell you guys a little story so you have some meat and bones to remember, because otherwise I can be talking just more general stuff without some particular stories. The Rebbetzin always used to say, as Geld hat lieber cheshbon, und mit jenem Geld darf man sich sehr rechnen. money loves or demands proper accounting, and with somebody else's money, you have to be very careful, because when she used to put the money on the table to pay different stores on Kingston Avenue, she was never off by 1 cent. Sometimes she would say you have to take $5 from here to there when you get the change in the store, but the change was always to the penny laid out on the table, right? And I start collecting it, I just put it in my pockets. And then, you have to count it again. I said, ich bin sicher, dass es schon gezählt und sind stock in Tos. She insists that I count it, and she keeps telling me that. Anyways, and one time I found a quarter on the floor, I picked it up. She told me to keep it forever. And it was not missing there. Apparently it fell down, but when she counted and recounted, she forgot or didn't realize that the quarter fell on the floor. So she gave it to me. I have it till today in my safe. But in any case, because she expressed herself that found money is a sagute Sache, der sozusagen mal hitten. I don't think she used the word sgula, but that's what it sounded like to me. In any case, so she was always super, super, super careful with money. And the Rebbetzin gave me a lot of stuff. When I was by the Rebbetzin, now again, we're talking almost 50 years ago, the Rebbetzin redid a big part of the house. She painted she emptied the whole upstairs, she painted the top floor. She did some work in the section that you could see in the house now, but it was repainted, so you can't really see it. She was very detailed, very aristocratic. She wanted it exactly painted her way and done her way. Spent a lot of time in having it her way, like very malchusdik and whatnot. But a lot of stuff she gave me away. The Rebbetzin hated what in my home we call baltashchis. She doesn't want anything tossed, thrown away. Somebody can use it, give it away here, there, give it away to the bazaar, give it away to somebody. If you can use it, nichts gesundheit. She would never throw away anything that could be used. It's just not even something that comes in Kishbaina. So these are like little booklets that different organizations used to send in to collect money. These days we get maybe stickers, address things. They don't send anything big like this. So the Rebbe's had a bunch of these. This one is the other, actually it says Yeshiva of King's Highway. Anyways, you could see this was a yeshiva, it's hard to see with the light. This was like a yeshiva in King's Highway, whatever. The zip code was only 2 numbers. It tells you how old this is. And the Rebbetzin would keep track of what she owed to the bakery that used to deliver to her. So they used to deliver $3 at a time, $2, but she wouldn't rely on them that they're going to keep track. Plus, they didn't even care to keep track because they're happy not to charge the Rebbetzin, but the Rebbetzin doesn't want anybody free or favors or whatever. So the Rebbetzin would keep track. It's a little bit hard to see on the screen. The Rebbetzin would literally keep track. Then she would add it all up and prepare the money to pay them. So there's pages of this. Here's another one you could see. Can you guys see? Anyways, that's just an example. Now moving on. Again, I'm trying to tell stories, but at the same time also trying to explain a little bit the type of person, so to speak, the Rebbetzin was and her midas and whatnot. Going into a little bit of so all the way through the years that I worked for her, the longer I was there, the more I became what she calls a Egener, one of the inner circle, one of ours, right? One of the group, so to speak, right? So anything I want to do, if she can do it, or if she thinks the maid can do it, it's a whole conversation or / argument and whatnot. Usually I prevail. The Rebbetzin learned very quickly that I kind of like to have the last word. Most of the time I prevail, but not always. So the certain things the Rebbetzin can do, then that's it. She just uses all the nice words. Ich sage nicht so schwer. Ich will auch nicht matriarch sein. And don't forget, she's paying me. And I'm here because I want to serve. Every time goes through all these nice words. Nicht so schwer. And pay attention. She never says do. She says ihr. Because in the aristocratic way, everybody is a Bekovidik person. And I barely had the beard at the time. And she calls me ihr. But in any case, in French, they also have that for like third person or Bekovidik, you say vous instead of tu. I'm born in Paris. I think you guys know that by now. In any case, so we always have these little debates, what I can do or can't do. And she says, das ist nicht Arbeit für Eigenum. Hello, I'm happy to do it. Anyways, one time, if I didn't have enough of these issues, one time, so the house is a very long house. I assume that most of you have been there. I don't know if you walked through the whole house or just in the front, but the house is a long house. But when the Rebbe comes in, with a show of hands, how many people have been at the house? Okay, good. Did you get to walk through the whole length or only by the davening? So some of you walk through the whole house. So it's a long house, but when the Rebbe comes in, some of the doors were scraping a little bit, so the Rebbe slams them a little bit. But I think Das Tachton, part of the reason the Rebbe slams them a little bit, so he announces that he arrived, because he comes at 7 p.m. for a little meal, or he comes 3 o'clock in the morning after Yechidus of Verbringen, so he comes 5 o'clock in the morning after Yechidus, or 8 o'clock in the morning after Yechidus. So for the Rebbe not to get started, I guess, so it kind of slams the door. So as soon as we hear the door, we, meaning the Meshosim, whoever is there, we kind of bail out from the back door, right? Unless I have to be there for different reasons, then I stay. But otherwise, I just grab my coat and I go. So this time I remember vividly, I'm standing in the kitchen, the Rebbetzin is sitting by the little table with the telephone that's still there now, and you can see it on websites, those pictures, and in Fachabads, whatever. And I hear the door slam, and I'm standing and eating a pot of ice cream by the sink. I wasn't going to throw away the ice cream and run away. You know, I wasn't going to do that. So I basically, the Rebbetzin kind of stood up to greet the Rebbe. And the Rebbe, I hear the Rebbe walking. There was no carpets, there was just little areas with rugs, but you can hear like the head of Tzivis Hashem, the sergeant of the army, is walking because the wooden floor, the Rebbe walks really heavy. And the Rebbetzin stood up to greet him. She says, "Oi, oi, what schleppst du? Notik is doch da." So I realized in a split of a second what happened. Somebody delivered from Raskin, food store, instead of delivering to the back, must have been a new delivery guy, whatever, left in the front. The Rebbe came to in the front, and Rabbi Kwinsky or Rabbi Klein, whoever it is, they can't really see what happens there, because the stairs are way down, right? The Rebbe saw box by the door. The Rebbe is coming in, walking in with a banana box in his hands. So the Rebbe got all like Stavros says, you know, what schleppst du? Like, notik is doch da, like, you can put it down. And the Rebbe tells aloud, like, notik zeichayid. But I think at the same time, when the Rebbe was saying that, the Rebbetzin like wasn't even almost paying attention what the Rebbe was saying. She wants him just to put down the box. And she said, like, nochmal notik is doch da. And I think the Rebbe repeated the second time. And I knew that second that this is not going to work very well. Because in Sipur Hasidim, you know, when I was a kid, there wasn't lots to read. So I'm a Boki in Sipur Hasidim. I hope you guys are Boki my Morim Mesiches. So I'm very Boki in Sipur Hasidim. There's a lot of stories there in different Rebbish dynasties in Heufen, where usually it's a Yosem and a Yosoim, they work there. And sometimes the Rebbes, they're like giving little lectures, or they scream at their wives or the staff in the kitchen that they're not being nice enough to the staff, right? To the helpers in the kitchen. As soon as I heard the Rebbe say that, in Hebrew they say Nafalia Simon, you know, the light bulb went on in my head. This is not going to work very well, because as it is, I'm already having issues with the Rebbe not letting me do different things. And now it's almost the Rebbe put the gushpanka, the Rebbe put the seal on the situation. Obviously, the Rebbe was saying it to with Chiba and Ava and to make me feel good at home, in the house, or whatever. But nevertheless, the Rebbetzin takes it serious. And at some point later on, I want to do something. She says, "Nee, ich das dann später," oder the Helferket or Ston Morgan, something like that. And I said, of course, I give her an argument. I said, "Nee, ich das dann, es nimmt 2 Minuten, ich gar nicht gearbeitet." The Rebbetzin knew that I grew up in a home with 10 kids. I didn't have a dryer. So I'm not scared of doing certain work, right? Because I'll get in a minute the story with the dryer, with the Rebbe's shirts. So anyways, so this is all to show you how careful she is with being matrech another person, like 24/7. And she says, "You gedenk was my man hat gesagt?" I said, "Oh boy, this is getting very serious. Like, you remember what my husband said?" So I'm thinking that she's only saying it a little bit like Chavivusa, and eventually she'll just, you know, forget it, or she won't be mentioning it. So the first time, I just give a little smile and I continue my argument, or I'm going to do it, or I tell her I'm going to do it. Once it persisted a few times, so I realized I have to get serious. So with the Rebbetzin, I never call her anything, right? Because I don't have to call her. I'm sitting next to her. I'm a foot away from her. I don't have to call her anything, right? But when there were situations like this or certain things, like in a situation like this, other times, so I said, "Rebbetzin." So I'm reminding her that she's the Rebbetzin. I'm here for a reason. Usually she sits up a little bit. If she had like a smile on her face or something, she like gets more serious, because I'm addressing her like almost officially. I said, "Rebbetzin." I take a little pause because I'm getting into the serious, to the mimer now, right? So I take a little pause and I said, "Rebbetzin, ich will halt in den sagen dieselbe Sache, was der Rebbe hat gesagt, ich muss sagen dem Rebbe, als von wen hat gesagt, I think I even use the word Massa. I'm not certain. I said, wird halten in den Mann das, ich muss sagen dem Rebbe, das von das gesagt, lass ihn mir gar nicht stand. But before we already finished, says, okay, like, okay, we got a deal, we're done with it, I'm not going to mention it again. By the way, a few times during the years that I was there, I don't know how the conversation came, the Rebbetzin reminded me of the first day I came. There were certain conversations, friendly conversations. Again, you have to have the picture in your mind that I'm schmoozing with my Bobby, okay? Also, the fact that I was from France, and my parents are from Russia, and her sister knew my grandfather from Russia very, very well, so I was kind of very quickly Egener, so to speak. But we compared a lot of notes about France, so we kind of come from the same country almost in a way. We compared notes and how she had the interactions with the people in France and my experiences and things like that. So she knew that at the end, I would get to do it my way in some way, I'm saying. Here's one little example to show you how the Rebbetzin was serious. I think I got off track for a second. So one time she's sitting in the kitchen. If you guys saw the little kitchenette table, we're sitting there. And the Rebbetzin says, almost like speaking to herself, she says, I have to remember later, in other words, after I leave, so to speak, later to hang up my husband's shirts. This is all in Yiddish, okay? So I said, what's the problem? What's the problem? I'm going to hang up. Nay. It's not what I meant. I was just talking to myself. I said, why can't I do it? She says, nay, like, something like that. Like, it's too hard work for you. So at that point also, I call her Rebbetzin. I said, Rebbetzin. And I stopped for a minute. So I get her full attention, so to speak. And I say, you know my whole history by now, you can imagine. And I said, das ist nicht keine Arbeit, das ist nicht schwere Arbeit. I said, in my house, there wasn't even a dryer. This is not work. I said, and besides, if you don't let me do it, then I'm doing it for the Rebbe. So at that point, she didn't kind of continue, but she said, Nein, she like literally said, Nein, like don't do it, I'm going to do it later. And to me, I know for the Rebbetzin to go down the stairs, it's a lot of work, it's in a basement. I think that she was hanging up the shirts, my explanation, because I think the iron better. The maid, when she used to come, she used to iron them. And I think when they don't go in the dryer, the iron better, the Rebbe's shirts. So I think there was 5 or 6 shirts. She got a phone call. I ran downstairs. I hung up the shirts. Took me 2.5 seconds. And I came back upstairs like nothing happened. 11 o'clock at night, my phone rings at 7:70. I sleep in 7:70, as I said. And I had my own phone line that was dedicated to the Rebbetzin. One line that we took from the Cheder Shidurim, so she could find me or I can call her. I can call the Rebbetzin. By the way, sometimes when I get into a deep conversation, I say him or her, Chas v'sholom, obviously it's not Heder covered to the Rebbe or the Rebbetzin, it's just that I forget to mention every time the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. In any case, she calls 11 o'clock, she said, ich habe nicht gewollt materiell sein, ich habe gesagt, dass sie geht aus tun. And nothing I could tell her would help. She says, I didn't want to bother you, and I tried to reiterate again, but how many times can I repeat the same thing? Anyways, that's just to show you how she was so careful being matriarch. On the other hand, when it came to the Rebbetzin was every minute of her life, like I mentioned before, was devoted to be there for the Rebbe in one way or another. Just little examples that are not little when you think of it. First of all, the Rebbetzin herself told me indirectly, she told me directly, but it was an indirect conversation, that she never goes to sleep before the Rebbe comes home. Now, I mentioned before that sometimes the Rebbe comes home 8 o'clock in the morning. And this is before Lamed Ches that the Rebbe had a heart attack. And after Lamed Ches, not much of it changed. His schedule changed a little bit. But she told me, how did she ask me or tell me? Because she knows that I would never go to sleep before the Rebbe leaves at 70, right? So she knows that I know the Rebbe went home. So she said, like one time she asked me, wie viel Säge ist Maman gekommen heim? Like, what time did the Rebbe come home? And I feel terrible. It's like I'm going to massacre on the Rebbe that he came very late, right? But she's asking me what time. So I think it was like 6 a.m. or something. And she tells me, ich bin sehr vermattert, als ich bin eingeschlafen. Or she said, ich habe eingedremmelt. I don't remember the expression, but what that meant is she didn't go to sleep, but she fell asleep. So pay attention. Based on what I explained to you before, when the Rebbe comes in, he slams the door, and he walks on the floor, you can hear him a mile away. The Rebbe most probably came in tiptoeing because he was hoping or assumed that the Rebbetzin fell asleep. It's obviously from the way she explained that she didn't go to sleep. She most probably fell asleep on the couch. And then the Rebbe left the house. I don't think she asked him because she doesn't want the Rebbe to feel bad that the Rebbetzin knows how late he came. Or maybe she doesn't know when he left the house, but she has no idea when he came home. Another story that's a little bit related to this, and that's very important for Yeshiva Bochurim. I know you appreciate very much Lekutei Sichos and everything else the Rebbe worked on, but Lekutei Sichos is exclusive besides Igrois, and maybe even more than Igrois. Lekutei Sichos is exclusive. The Rebbe's entire Onok Sovis Yehovis, its entire, the Rebbe put in his whole, everything in the Sichos. So when I was a little kid in Paris, in Brunois, they used to say that, yeah, I'm sure that the Rebbe's Magia, the Sicha, with the main Ha'ores and everything, it's called the main Hagor. The first time that is given to the Rebbe, it's in triple lines, typed, triple lines, so the Rebbe can add his Ha'ores, and he goes for pages and pages. That one, I have no idea how many hours the Rebbe spends in it. It's not a secret. And eventually it gets better and smaller. Eventually they retype it, it's almost clean, and it goes through a whole process. But the main Ha'ora is huge, and especially the earlier years, the Rebbe had to write a lot more. Eventually, when the Rebbe mentioned a certain item that the Rebbe already had said before in the Ha'ora, the people who were doing the Sichos, they already would bring it from here to there. So the Rebbe was doing less. But I'm talking now in the late Lameds, Rashi Sichos, and the Yener Shel Torah, Lekutei Levitzchok, the Rebbe would spend an enormous amount of time. It's known by 100 ways, but I am a personal witness. Even after Lamed Ches, Ira Weiss, the Rebbe's doctor from Chicago, I don't know if you guys ever had him speak to you guys or if you guys met him or whatever, Ira Weiss from Chicago. You guys should have him come down to speak. He still does public speaking, I think. So almost every single day, he called the Rebbetzin if he wasn't in New York. But even if he was in New York, he would meet with the Rebbetzin. But if he wasn't in New York taking care of the Rebbe, he would get the reports from all the other doctors. And he would report to the Rebbetzin every single day. He would call around 7 o'clock. I wasn't always there, but every time I was there, or most of the time I was there, if I'm by the phone, I'd answer the phone. I'd talk to him for a minute. To me, I mean, he was like a brother to me. To me, he can also ask questions he can't ask the Rebbetzin, right? Because to me, he can ask. To me, he can also ask, like, how's the Rebbetzin feeling? And how is she holding up? He's not going to ask her because she's going to say, thank you very much, doctor. I'm fine, because she's just, I'm a cover likus, right? So she doesn't make it simas about herself. But to me, he can ask. But there's stories and stories related to this. But here's the point I want to get to. So also, I'm going from one story to another, but also the Rebbetzin, every single phone call she tells him she wants to call him back, because those days, long distance was $1 to $2 or $3 a minute. So she tells him she wants to call him back. He always says, no, thank you, don't worry. They speak for a few minutes, usually very short conversations. Like I said, when I answer the phone, he talks to me a minute or two. So one time I was talking to him for a little bit, and then I went to the kitchen. I said, Dr. Weiss, or I said, Dr. Ira, Dr. Ira, or whatever. So she runs quickly to take the phone because she doesn't want it to cost on his dime, right? And she says, she tells me, as ich bin nicht zugegangen gleich, like I didn't come right away to stand by the phone after I'm finished, because she didn't know it was him or something like that. Or she thought I was talking to Gansburg, she says. I said, aber zu Gansburg rede ich Hafidish, right? And here I was speaking English. She tells me, Torch gedei dibur, it's also a little bit a remes to me, not that you drink sich in the house, you don't see, you don't hear anything, right? It's a very delicate remes to me, in my opinion. She says, like Torch gedei dibur, she says, ich habe sich gelernt by the Vater in the Heim, or I think she even said by the Zayde, but I think she said by the Vater in the Heim. I learned by my father's house that you can be present by conversation and you don't hear anything. Very interesting. There was a couple other times she told me similar stuff, but I don't want to get carried away. Anyways, in one of these conversations with Ira Weiss, the first question he always asks her, right? Because I can almost hear the phone and I hear by her answer. And I also know when the Rebbe comes and goes. So I'm putting together all of it. The first question is always, did the Rebbe sleep last night? I don't know if he says the Rebbe or he says your husband. I'm pretty sure he says the Rebbe. He says, did the Rebbe rest or did the Rebbe sleep last night? This one particular time, I remember it like it happened today. And she says, no, not at all. She reiterated like a few times. Now, I have no idea, like I always say, what the Rebbe does or doesn't do. Is hanging out with Arizal, with Rashbi, with the Frierdiker Rebbe. I have no Asik ben Historis, and guess what? I don't even have an Asik ben Nigla, Alachas Kamvakamo ben Historis. But I can tell you this. When the Rebbe left 770, he only took one envelope, Manila envelope, with the main Haggadah for the Sikha, the Rashi Sikha of that week. I'm almost certain that I actually brought it down from the VAD. That's the funniest thing, right? So I'm full circle. When the Rebbe came back in the morning, it's the only envelope he handed in. And the Rebbetzin said that he did not lay down to rest at all. So I don't have to explain. If you had the love of the Rebbe's Sikha still now, you can imagine how much time the Rebbe put into this. When we're talking about the Rebbe's time, I know that everybody knows the Rebbe's time is so important. So I want to point out a few things which is negated to kids in Bochurim, but we all the Rebbe's kids in a way. I hope so. This story is not particular, maybe so accurate in detail, but the first time that the Rebbe went to Gan Yisrael, which I think was a result of Hasidim telling the Rebbe that he had to go on dacha, that he had to go like on vacation on dacha like the other Rebbes used to go. So I think to be Yoitze, the Rebbe went to camp, or that's one of the reasons at least, but the Rebbe also wanted to see the camp, all of it together. So the first time the Rebbe went to camp, the car had a flat tire, right? They fixed it and everything was fine. The second time when they started to kind of pressure the Rebbe that he needs another vacation or go off dacha, the Rebbe kind of expressed himself that he hasn't made up yet for the time he lost the first time. And I'm sure he wasn't referring to the time he davened mincha with the kids and said a sikha, because that was the Rebbe's entire life. It's obvious he was referring to the split of a second, and maybe it was kaviochel hesach hadas in when the flat happened or something like that. But yet at the same time, the Rebbe devoted hundreds and hundreds of hours in what seemingly could have been done with a lot less time. The Rebbe, the rallies, all the rallies the Rebbe did, which I helped many for years organize and helped the Rebbe give out the dimes and whatnot. The Rebbe spent hundreds of hours, but the rallies, speaking to the kids like Boy Parade, the Rebbe could have come down and given the Sikha and Daven Mincha upstairs. There was 100 shortcuts the Rebbe could have made. The Rebbe was there literally for hours, repeating the psukim, listening to JJ, translating, sometimes correcting him and picking up on what he said. The Rebbe spent enormous amount of time on pretty much you guys, the Rebbe's kids. So also talking about time, I was going to mention before about the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin was very careful with the Rebbe's time. We like to say that the Rebbetzin was the Rebbe's #1 chassid and biggest chassid. On Purim, I remember it vividly 1 year. I can't say if it was 2 years. On Purim, I spent a lot of the day in the house, most of the day. And the Rebbe was very pressured, if I could use that word, to get back to 770, to whatever his level of achanas is for the Farbrengen. You can clearly see that the Rebbe is like on the go. And so somehow, for whatever the reason is, the Rebbe would put on a new hat. At least one Purim I remember 100%. Maybe it was even more than one, but one I remember vividly. And a lot of these stories I haven't written down or recorded, so I remember them by now, right? The Rebbetzin apparently schlepped down all the hats from upstairs. And the Rebbetzin is a very petite person. The Rebbe's hats were big. I think the Rebbetzin had to go up and down the stairs maybe a half a dozen times, because I don't think she can carry more than one box at a time or two. She put the hats on the corner of the chairs in the little dinette, so the Rebbe can try them on. I assume the Rebbe took a split of a second to try them on. One was good, okay. But if I bring in people, the Bochurim realized that the Rebbe was with a new hat. I mean, there's rumors that used to come from, I'm not saying rumors, true or not, but I'm not here to certify, give Gushpanka, whatever, used to come from Italy. Gershom Mendel all of a sudden used to bring them and bring them maybe for Shachmanis, give them as gifts or whatever. That's just the story. So the point is that the Rebbetzin did not want the Rebbe to waste an extra minute. You know, he could have done it maybe the night before or whatever, could have done it upstairs. She brought it down so the Rebbe would go to the Farbrengen with a new hat. Another thing I wanted to mention just about the Rebbetzin, how devoted she was, and why we all so many thank yous for giving us the Rebbe in the most simplest of terms. I myself, in all the years I was there, and other people I spoke to, they never remembered that it was a case, unless, God forbid, it was an emergency, or when the Rebbetzin went to Europe, but when the Rebbetzin was in town, which is 99% of her life, there was never a time where the Rebbe came home and the Rebbetzin wasn't ready with a meal. The Rebbe comes home one time a day. On the days of Kriyas Torah, the Rebbe comes at 10 o'clock. This is all, I'm talking in around the Mitches, before the Rebbetzin passed. I'm talking when it was dozens of years, the Seder. The Rebbe goes out for Kriyas Torah with the Bochurim upstairs in the Zal. You've seen the pictures and everything. And on other days, the non-Sheni v'Chamishi, the non-Kriyas Torah day, the Rebbe comes 12 o'clock. So in the winter, the Rebbe goes home, and Mincha is at 3:15. So in the winter, the Rebbe goes home around 4 or 5 for a quick meal. That meal doesn't have a name because it encompasses all the meals. And in the winter, it's more, Ma'ariv is at 9:30. So in the summer, it's more like 7, 8, something like that. But the Rebbetzin has no idea when the Rebbe is going to come home, right? So if she goes into Manhattan for whatever the reasons or anywhere else, she's in a rush to come back because maybe the Rebbe is going to come home at 4. And if the Rebbe only left at 2, she barely has time to turn around, park the car, and do whatever she was going to do, or pick up her sister, go to Manhattan. There was never a time that the Rebbe came home, the Rebbetzin wasn't there, because I've asked other people who worked all the years for the Rebbe, the Rebbetzin. In parentheses, one time I come home, and I think there was, I don't remember, there was money on the table. Maybe it was nothing to do with money. But anyways, I see there's a yarmulke. So the Rebbetzin has a yarmulke on the table, a very like young child yarmulke. And I remember, I'm the handy guy who goes with short sleeves and without a hat. So to the Rebbetzin, I'm like a young bacherel, right? And I was that way. So the Rebbetzin, I guess to show her love, express her love or whatever, she tells me as ich bin Punkt oder zufällig. I think she used the word that she happened to be, but I know that was not the case. She doesn't want me to feel bad. She says, I happened to be, I was on the east side and I picked you up a yarmulke and I hope you like it. So I said, oh, thank you very much. Yes, I love it. I didn't take it out from the safe. It's in the bank, so I didn't go get it. I think it's in the safe in New York, actually. Basically, it was burgundy with little gold trim around it, embroidered. And she says, do you like it? I said, yeah, I tried it on. It looked perfect. The size was good. And I thanked her very much. And she was so happy that she was, what they call in Hebrew, kolel matarat, that she got the right gift. But first of all, I wouldn't walk around with a brown yarmulke to begin with. Second of all, yarmulke that the Rebbetzin drove all the way to the east side with a huge car and was probably can barely find parking. And she bought it for me as a gift. I would not wear it every day, lose it in a mikveh, lose it at the Farbrengen or something. Are you kidding me? So of course I show up the next day and I have the yarmulke. So she says, I see that you don't really like it. I said, no, I don't even let her finish. I said, no, I love it. Ich habe das sehr lieb, aber ich will es nicht tragen alle Tage. Ich will es halten für Shabbos und Yontev. Shabbos and Yontev, I would rarely see her, and if I did, I would be in a hat. So she wouldn't know what's under the hat, right? So she says, nah, like she's convinced that I don't like it because I'm not wearing it. So, okay, we close the chapter, goes by a little time, I think payroll time rolls around. So she has a bunch of money laid out on the table and payroll, or maybe it was just my payroll. And then there's money on the side. She says, das ist für eine andere Yarmulke, kauft was ihr gleicht, kauft was ihr hat lieb und nichts Gesundheit. I said, nein. A größten Dank habe ich gesagt, dass ich lieb die Yarmulke. Ich halte es auf Shabbos und Yontev, will es nicht tragen alle Tag. I think she was getting the remes, the very fat remes, that I'm not going to wear a yarmulke every day that she bought from me. I mean, she knows she's Rebbetzin Schneerson. She can call herself Schneerson, she calls it store in Kingston, and she says, this is Schneerson from President Street. She's very well aware that she's the Rebbetzin, and the daughter and the grandchild, the great-grandchild, the great-grandchild of Rebbe's. Trust me, she's very aware of that, but she doesn't allow you to play any of these games in the house. Anyway, she wouldn't have it. She says, nehmt us und von nichts Gesundheit, whatever. So I bought another yarmulke, and of course, I didn't wear that one either. But the one I bought afterwards was even more modern than the one she bought me, because I wanted to show her that it wasn't the color that was the issue. It was just that I didn't want to use it. I use it only for special days or chupes or things like that. Talking about, I'm going from one subject to the other. It's more becoming a more Hamish style than individual stories. I haven't even gotten to page 1, by the way. So I don't know, have we consumed a half hour already? Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's almost an hour. I haven't even got started. Rabbi Halberstam, what are we going to do? I barely got started. Tell me how much time I have. Text me on one of the phones how much time I have. Anyways, so what was I talking about? I was talking about I forgot what I was saying for a second. Okay, so basically, let me try to get into a few. I want to mention a few more things about the Rebbetzin, then I want to tell some particular stories so you can have certain things you could remember. The Rebbetzin was up to date with what goes on with Anash in the whole world in Shluchim. You have to understand those days there was no fax. There was nothing. Hold on a second, please. There was no fax. There was no publications. There was no magazines. I mean, there was nothing. The Rebbetzin was up to date, mainly because the few people who visited her, the Rebbetzin is a listener like no one else. And I'm not saying it because she's the Rebbetzin, because that's the fact. In my entire life, the years I was there, she was probably only interrupted me a few times. One of them was with the money when I first came in, and maybe with the yarmulke. Mamish, not only does she not nichnas later divrei chaver, she doesn't interrupt. She waits till you're done, finished, and then she starts asking a question or whatever. When you listen good, you learn a lot of things. So if somebody shows up from Brazil, from France, from Kfar Chabad, from Yerushalayim, from anywhere, but the Rebbetzin, but the person visiting the Rebbetzin for a half hour, 1 hour, the Rebbetzin knows everything in that city and state from A to Z. The Rebbetzin was super in awe of the Shluchim Meguat from Mamish, from a comfortable place, Khan Heights, and you guys maybe barely can understand what it used to be then. If you wanted to get Chol of Yisrael, it would be $20 for one Chol of Yisrael to send it to Texas, or who's talking about Alaska. There was no Shluchim in Alaska yet, but in all the places the Shluchim went, they left Khan Heights, or they left warm homes in the big centers of Yiddishkeit, and the Rebbetzin was in awe how this whole thing even happened, and in indirectly, she didn't say that, but like what her husband makes happen. To some other people, official visitors, she was like commenting that, like my husband kind of has it figured out, or she used certain words like, he got it done, he did it. But with me, it was more talking about the Etzem Zach. But a lot of times, certain people went on Shlichus, she knew their families. So like when the Shluchim went to Tzfas, for example, she knew some of them and their families. I don't want to start mentioning names. She would ask me what kind of Bochurim they are. Anyways, very shortly, she got convinced that I would never say anything bad about anybody. I said, "Nein, ich sage the memes." Or if somebody gets engaged and she knows only the name, she heard that XYZ got engaged, what's a sort Bocher is there, what's a sort Mensch is there, whatever. And I only tell her good things because they're all good things. Kulam Mahuvim, Kulam Burim, Kulam Gidoshim. But it's the truth. But after a while, she got convinced that she's never going to hear anything bad from me. Halvai or main. Anyways, I want to go into a couple of particular stories, like I said, so you have a frame of work instead of just the general lachluchis and the surrounding. So the first story I have written here is goes like this. So the Rebbetzin usually very scheduled, but sometimes something could happen. Either she forgot to mention that she needed to go somewhere, or she got a last-minute appointment or something. The Rebbetzin knew my Seder. The Rebbetzin knows that I wake up. I know you guys are going to fall off the chairs. Doesn't matter what time 770 closes, so to speak, the light, not that I ever close the light. I wake up each and every single day, I hate to say it, at 12 o'clock. Now, it could be I went to sleep at 8 o'clock, but I wake up at 12. If I went at 8, obviously I said Krishma before I went to sleep. And at 5 in the morning, sometimes you can already say Shema, whatever it is, but I wake up at 12, my Seder Hayom starts at 12. Never, ever has the Rebbetzin called before 12 o'clock. And even then, she excuses herself because she knows I was probably just getting up, or she woke me up. So I make my voice very quickly. Very quickly, I guess Nagelvas in the split of a second, and I answer the phone. I said, "Hello," as if I was expecting a phone call, right? But she knows that I'm playing a game. Anyways, this one time she calls me and she says, "Entschuldigt mich, hoffe es nicht mehr gewesen." Maybe she said, "Ich nicht geweckt," or whatever. And I need to go somewhere, and I need to come with me if you can watch the car. I said, "Yeah, sicher, I'll be ready. You can pick me up on Union Street." She used to pick me up on Union Street behind where the Koilel is, or used to be. So she doesn't show up in front of 77. She picks me up on Union Street. I said, "Yeah, by the time she drives, I'll get dressed." I also used to be in Atzola, so I get dressed in a minute and a half. But she continues to say, this is verbatim. Ich will sich nicht mischen in eine religiöse Geschäften, aber ich wird doch nicht gedavnt, will ich fahren allein, or something like that. And I started to tell her, I didn't know what to say. Should I say that I daven sometimes very late or that I daven very quick? Both of them is going to be a little bit of a bad situation, kind of an cheshbon. So I didn't know which one to say. I was between with the Asen story, similar story. I didn't know which one to say. So I said, the memes, as I'm all daven ich a bisschen später. Right? So it was summer. I remember 100% it was summer. So she almost in Tom says, nee, ich will vorhin allein. Mir hat man gelernt, I'm almost certain she said in the Vater's heim, at der Sache and steht too, darf man davnen. She says, no, I'm going to go by myself. I tried arguing maybe one more time, but I realized it wasn't going to go anywhere. When the Rebbetzin is decisive, she's very decisive. And she said, you know, they taught me, I was brought up in my parents' home, my father's home, that the first thing when you get up in the morning, you have to daven. So that was the end of that. By the way, the Rebbetzin went, I'm afraid to say it publicly because it gets recorded, eventually it's going to be on YouTube or whatever. The Rebbetzin went, and apparently she had no choice, she had to double park. In New York, double parking is part of life, and she got a ticket. The next day, she gave me the ticket to give to Rabbi Kvinsky. She told me Rabbi Kvinsky fixes the tickets. Fixing the tickets means you pay for it, right? But anyways, I think she had a doctor's appointment, or an opening became the last minute, so the doctor said, you know, Mr. Schnelson, can you come to 1 o'clock? And that's why she kind of, the last minute, she needed somebody to go watch the car. But I've never driven the Rebbetzin. The Rebbetzin drove me. I didn't have a license, and even when I had a license, she would drive. Anyway, so this is about the davening in the morning. I mentioned earlier that the Rebbetzin wouldn't allow any rabbistra to be played in the house, right? In the house, it's Mr. Schneerson. She refers to the Rebbe as my husband, and numerous occasions when I had to almost like bump into the Rebbe because it was different situations, there Pesach or Purim or whatever. I always get totally shaken. I'm standing and trembling. And the Rebbetzin always behind the Rebbe has the same line every single time. The Notik, jeder Mal, was sagt, wird zu dreißelt. Ich halte mir nicht Sorgen, du beißt keinem nicht. So a couple of you guys speak Yiddish. I can see you smiling. And basically, she says, there's Notik, every time he sees you, he gets all shaken up. I keep telling him that you don't bite anyone. Like as if the Rebbetzin saying that is going to help alleviate the stress or the situation. But in any case, one time there was a very interesting situation. I think it was actually Shvat or a Shabbos before Shvat. Then, you know, before La Metres, because I know it was before La Metres. And there was a huge snowstorm. So a couple of Bochurim, Vania Kotem Besecham, me included, we decided that we're going to, huge snow. We decided that we're going to try to find somebody and explain to them properly the Lashon Amuta, you know, Amir Lakum is a shvuz. We try to explain them in a nice way that maybe they can clean the way for the president, you know, from President Street to 770, and after Shabbos, we'll take care of everything. Anyways, we found a kid who's coming back from whatever. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. The snow, I think, tapered off, or 7 in the morning. And the Rebbe was going to come, start walking from the house. It was probably 9:30, whatever, or something like that. So it was enough time. We cleared the pathway all the way from the house. We cleared up half the deck, the porch, the entire stairs. And we made a walkway 2 or 3 feet wide all the way to 770. It was the only place in New York that you can see the pavement. Anyway, since I was already up the whole night, which by the way was the second night, because Thursday night nobody sleeps anyways in 770. So it was the second night we stayed up, and I figured that I should most probably be there because there used to be 2 Bochurim also always used to walk behind the Rebbe when he went home and when he's coming from home to 770. So I figured I should also be there. Whether the Bochurim are going to come or not doesn't matter. I should be there. So I'm like an Egener. The Rebbetzin would feel comfortable that she will see that I'm also there. And I didn't know if the Rebbe was going to use the walkway, the path we made. We presumed that he wouldn't. And whatever, I should just be there, chas v'shalom, if there was an emergency or whatever, something, I would, you know, I'm a little bit different than the rest of the Bochurim. I would be able to interfere, how should I say, right? So as we anticipated, as we anticipated happened, the Rebbe did not, in Yiddish called it gemacht nicht wissendig. The Rebbe pretended he didn't even see the pathway, walked in the snow. But on the stairs, he had no choice because we cleaned the whole stairs. There's nothing the Rebbe can do. So the stairs were completely clean, I'm almost certain. But the rest of it, the Rebbe acted as if he didn't even see that it was a pathway. And whatever, I walked behind the Rebbe, the Bochurim behind me, whatever, Baruch Hashem, everything went well. There is a Hasidic saying, am ist zugebunden eben, fällt man nicht unten. When you're attached above, meaning to the Shemayim, you don't fall down here. So Baruch Hashem, everything went b'shalom, the Rebbe got to 770. But the Rebbetzin saw me by the door when she was closing the door behind the Rebbe, and she showed me like quickly to come up. So I ran up the stairs. She says, "Oh, I'm so happy to see that you're here. Do me a favor, please walk my husband and come back to tell me that they got there okay. And I want you to taste something, you know, to have a little Danish or something." I said, "Yeah, I'm going to walk the Rebbe and I'll come right back." I came back, so there's Danishes on the table, and one of them, I can clearly see that it's part of a Danish the Rebbe ate. So of course, I'm trying to play as if I don't know that the Rebbe ate it, and I'm take that one. And the Rebbetzin put out little fancy plates. You know, you don't eat on a napkin in the Rebbetzins house. It's Malchus. She put out what they call golden tellerlech. She put out a little fancy plate, most probably gold painted, and so, and she's sitting there, whatever. And I don't know if I was having a cup of milk. I don't remember. And I took the one that was already started because I was certain it was the Rebbe. Trust me. And if it's the Rebbetzins, I'm fine with Yerushalayim as well. But I'm sure I'm talking, nay. For you, I have a whole one. She says, is it doch a ganzer Mensch? She tells me, you're a whole person. I said, yeah, zochen weißt as a ganzer Mensch wie ich. So I was smiling. I said, you weißt was? Ich lesen beide. I think at that she agreed. I can't remember what actually happened. But I think I told her, ich lesen beide. But she doesn't want you to play Rabbistva in the house under no circumstances. There's a continuance to this story, which I'm a little bit reluctant to tell. I don't think I've ever told it anywhere. So I'll tell it very shortly because certain details I don't want to go into now. So the Rebbetzin asked me, maybe, she says, my husband, I'm sure, is not going to come back home for Kiddush or for Shabbos meal. So maybe we can use the same guy, the same youngster who cleaned the snow. I'm going to put something for my husband to have Shabbos meal to make Kiddush between the two doors. There used to be two doors. There was like a glass screen door, and then there was the heavy metal door that's there now. I said, yeah. I went back because I knew where he lived because we had to pay him. I went and knocked on the door. I pulled him out of bed, whatever. And I told him he had to take, you know, and I was sitting again in a tachten since after davening. Now, 2 nights already haven't slept. I can barely keep my eyes open. I need a toothpick to keep my eyes open. And generally, the Rebbe opened, listen carefully, the whole year, 24/7, the Rebbe opens up the door and shuts the door. And you can hear it because the door has a little shaky. And you can hear it even in the Zal. It's like the walls even shake a little bit. We always used to say, you know, Malachim come and go, but we don't see them, right? When I was sitting there, apparently all the Malachim got super scared and not one of them showed up and the Rebbe never opened the door. I figured the Rebbe is going to open the door. I'll jump up quickly. I already had my speech, you know, memorized, like Kisa B'Medrash Tilim. I had my whole mimer prepared. As the Rebbetzin habe ich geschickt for dem Rebbe zu machen Kiddush, if he was going to open the door. But he never, and I was going to like almost like put my foot in the door, but he never opened the door. So then came Mincha time. It's winter, came Mincha time. So I was sitting there from 1 to 4. I told the Bochurim not to open the Ganena Tachten door so I can talk to the Rebbe, because usually they open all the doors and the Rebbe walks straight from his room to, used to be upstairs. Mincha used to be upstairs on Shabbos. So I told the Bochurim not to open the door. And as soon as I heard the Rebbe get ready, I can hear the noise. The Rebbe is moving and getting ready. He opened the door. I kind of jumped up, so to speak, got in his face, and the Rebbe got startled a little bit, and he's like standing there. So I said, as the Rebbetzin habe ich geschickt for dem Rebbe zu machen Kiddush. I don't know if I said also the Shabbos. When Rebbe schon noch Minche, it's the Rebbe waschen, something like that, right? Before he even finished, the Rebbe gave a big smile, said, Ayashakeach, took a little pause. Oh, and I said, I'm sorry, I forgot the Iker, and I said, it was gebracht bei von der Mutter. Like, I'm teaching the Rebbe Hilche Shabbos, right? So I said, mit das gebracht bei von der Mutter. The Rebbe gave a big smile. He knows what kind of big lamdan he's dealing with. And he said, Ayashakeach, took a little pause and said, ich habe das Kapanim nicht essen, even though I'm saying it came by von der Mutter. A zweiter kann das ja essen. In other words, he's not questioning my Hilchas Shabbos. A zweiter kann das ja essen, meaning I could have it. And noch einmal Ayashakeach and shook his head, opened the door, and just disappeared to Mincha. To say that I was disappointed is an understatement. And of course, at night I went and I reported to the Rebbetzin what happened, right? as soon as Shabbos was out. But in any case, the Rebbetzin felt terrible. And in any case, I think B'das Tachton, the Rebbe kind of wanted to almost make up years later. The Rebbe knows I don't have smicha, trust me. Not because he's a Rebbe, because he knows that I don't have smicha. He doesn't have to be a Rebbe in Yuzrach HaKodesh to know that Mendel Notik doesn't have smicha. I started to learn smicha, but I never finished. In any case, on some of the letters, at least on two of them, the Rebbe took the Havach and he changed it to a Rav with a blue pen. It's kind of, in other words, okay, Notik, this is again my own, a little bit b'bdichusa, my own interpretation. I know you tried teaching Hilchah Shabbos, and I was, I was having sfekes if you're big lamdin, so I'm giving you kind of smicha. So I joked that I have smicha from the Ragachover, musmach acher musmach, because the Rebbe is smicha from the Ragachover. So when people ask me sometimes, "Are you a rabbi?" I said, "No." I said, "Do you don't have smicha?" I said, "Yeah, I have smicha from the Ragachover." I said, "The Ragachover? How is that possible?" I said, "Well, the Rebbe said a Rav, so you get the joke." But in any case, so that kind of finishes that part of the story. I want to mention just, if you notice how carefully the Rebbetzin was when she was telling me, she's not lecturing to me to daven in the morning. She just tells me, my father's home, we do like that. And, and I don't want you to change it on my cheshbon, in a very delicate way. I want to tell a few stories about either Rabbi Shaf or Rabbi Halberstam. I need to see what you're texting, so I apologize. Okay, I can't read all of it, but okay. I was told the Menal will decide, so for now I'm going. I want to tell a few.
Mendel.
Yes.
Another up to 15 minutes.
Okay, good. I'll go through a couple of very quick stories. Guys, take notes, pay attention, get ready. You listening carefully? Okay. So we know that the Rebbetzin ran away from Paris. I'll go through a couple of very quick stories. So the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were in Paris as the Nazis were advancing to Paris. And apparently part-time, or at least that time, they lived in what I call a very high-end building, an apartment building, or in a building that was high-ranking people lived there, because the Rebbetzin told me there was a lot of people from the army and high-ranking people, government people. One of those people, contrary to what's going on today in the world, and contrary to what I remember when I was a kid in France, especially after the Six-Day War, the Rebbetzin has very good memories from the Goyim in France having great respect for them. I stopped short of telling her that it's obviously they can see that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin are made of a different caliber. In Hebrew, it's called, the atzilut of their personality, their behavior, their being, and how they interact with people. Benodam l'chaveroi. So the people had respect for them. So one of very high-ranking people in the army told the Rebbetzin, I think the Rebbetzin, that he has a villa, meaning a chateau, a villa, way out of Paris. And in his knowledge and understanding, they knew that the Nazis, the Jews don't want to be in the way of the Nazis. And in his knowledge and whatnot, they're advancing from a certain direction. And his villa is on the other side. If they want, they can go and stay there. And the Rebbe declined. I think the Rebbetzin said, my man not nishon genommen, or something like that. I think the Rebbe declined, or she said we declined. But I'm pretty sure she said the Rebbe, my husband. Turned out to be that the Nazis actually came from that direction. And this guy is a high-ranking officer, and he didn't know what was coming or going. How did he get out of Paris? Either the same high-ranking officer or a different one offered to take him to the train so they can run away to the other direction, very far away, Nice and Vichy, which is the other side of France. The Rebbetzin told me when she came to the train station in France, in Paris, on board there, there's two big train stations. I think they're bigger than Grand Central in Manhattan, and they can hold 1 million people easily, and everyone is trying to run away from France, not just Jews, everyone, from Paris, to run away from where the war is. The Rebbetzin said there was 1 million people who was probably in the Vokzal, in the train station, and this person put him on the train because he had the ranks, he was a high officer, so panu derech, make way. I got some diamonds to put on the train, and put the Rebbetzin on the train. Turned out to be was the last train that left Paris. Afterwards, the Nazis bombarded the railroad, and nobody can leave Paris. Certain stories, and I'll start winding it down. Certain stories while they were there. while they were there, life obviously wasn't so easy because in Paris there wasn't much kashrus. Imagine running away in a city that barely had any from people or anything, in Nice and Vichy. The people in the hotel where the Rebbe stayed realized very quickly that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin barely eat anything. So I don't know if there was a little kitchenette in each apartment or room, and they got some food from the kitchen so they can make their own food. So they realized that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin are not taking anything pretty much. So they used to hide sugar cubes for the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, the owners. She called them the Eigentümer, like the owners, the Balabatim with the hotel. Realized, she said, as my man asked nicht. She's putting it all on the Rebbe, like he's the Mahada, as if she can eat anywhere, right? She says, some bemerkt oder some gesehen, as my man asked gar nicht oder sehr winzig or something like that, that the Rebbe hardly eats anything. So they used to hide sugar. During wartime, sugar is the most important thing to be able to survive. If you read, and I hope you read all the stories of the Russian Hasidim and Lefutofas and all of them, Leizananis and all these people, sugar is like the michyo. And on Pesach, some people survived literally just with sugar because they didn't have matzah. So they used to wink so other people wouldn't see. When she said I used to walk by the lobby, they used to wink with me with the eye to show me that in the corner there's a little sugar hiding for us. One very almost super earth-shattering story, in my opinion, and very emotional. So when it came to Pesach, the Rebbetzin said that the Rebbe wanted to have onion for karpas, for the Seder. From the way the Rebbetzin was explaining, he wanted davka onion. I'm pretty sure it was mashma ben ashitin that definitely there was other things the Rebbe could have used. Now, of course, I'm not going to go into any shetlach why the Rebbe wanted onion. But pashtas, bedas tachtoin, in my small mind, that's what his father did, that's what he did. You know, the one says the Rebbe how he folds his tefillin. The Rebbe said like his father taught him. So the guy continued, he said, how did your father do it? So the Rebbe realized who he's dealing with. So the Rebbe said, Mistama, like his father taught him. So the guy realized to stop asking, right? So basically, whatever the reason is, the Rebbe wanted to have onion and there wasn't any available. The Rebbe said that the Rebbe went on a cable car. She used the French word, téléphérique, a cable car that goes between mountains. Now we are talking, what, 80 years ago? Even today, it's not Mehuda. And you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, there was a huge disaster in Italy, whatever. But imagine during wartime, going where you don't know. The Rebbetzin said, Bazel Oshen. Ich habe nicht gewusst, noch einmal mein Mann sehen. I didn't know. I was wondering if I'm ever going to see him again. So the Rebbe, I guess, left, I don't know for how long, but it seems like he left for a very long period of time to try to find onion for the Seder. One story that I think I made pretty popular and printed in many places, and I hope you guys will read it eventually and whatnot, is the Rebbe, notwithstanding how precious his time is, that we all know that, and we all know that the Rebbe's precious time, there are witnesses from every walk of life that since the Rebbe was a little kid, literally 3-4 years old, did not waste a minute, did not go to play in the yard, learned every minute he can. Imagine when he was an adult. Notwithstanding that, the Rebbe conducted an entire mivtza, what I call mivtza pikuach nefesh. I wouldn't call it Havas Yisrael because pikuach nefesh. So because millions of people running away from Paris and the surrounding areas and big cities to way further into France, those cities were being overrun. You can call them homeless people, now that's what we call them, but basically there was millions of people who ran away literally with the clothes on the back. So the cities gave out a curfew. You have to be inside a home, in a hotel, you have to be somewhere. You can't be sleeping on the street and hang out on the street because the cities were getting destroyed. In order to be able to stay in a hotel, you had to show that you had a way to pay when the stay was done. And nobody knew when the stay was done, right? So today we have credit cards. Your parents have, some of you have it in your pockets. Those days it didn't exist. So that people had to show that they had the equivalent of $100. So I have $100. I think America wasn't at war, so the real currency maybe was just dollars. Either way, a person had to show that he had $100. The poverty and the World War II and everything that was going on then, this $100, I would estimate today, and I spoke to professionals, is the equivalent of $10,000. Do you know how much it costed to stay in the hotel for one night? 5 cents. 5 French cents to stay one night in a hotel. But even to sit in the lobby, you had to be registered. So people ran away from Paris, literally with the clothes on the back. They never most probably had $100 to begin with. How are they going to register in the hotel? The Rebbe had a whole mitzvah. The Rebbe would go outside find Yidden, give him the $100, tell him to go register, come back and give me the dollar. Because even to sit in the lobby, like I said, you had to show that you were registered in the hotel. The Rebbe ran a whole campaign to save Yidden. So if they're asked where they're staying, they can stay there staying in the hotel, or at night they can actually sit in the lobby on the floor. How they pay the bill eventually, what they paid, I have no idea, because, you know, the whole country was upside down and became more upside down as time, you know, as time went. Something super cute, and I think we have to finish, so that might be the last one. You know, so the Rebbetzin is always thinking of ways how she can express her appreciation to this little Bochurim, right? She always thinks that I'm hungry and I'm not fed and whatnot. She's always worried about me eating and sleeping. One time she asked me if I like pomegranate. I said, yeah, sure, okay. A couple of days later, I show up to the house. There's an entire pomegranate that was cleaned up of every little white piece. I'm sure the Rebbe said to put on gloves because those color your hands, right? And those were not disposable gloves those days. Those gloves, you wash them, you keep reusing them, not like today. There wasn't one little drop of, I was so embarrassed. There wasn't one little drop of white from the pomegranate. And it was like in a very fancy crystal bowl with a little silver spoon. The Rebbetzin didn't have stainless steel or anything like that in the house. Everything was silver. And I was so embarrassed. I had to sit and eat it. For a minute, I literally had on my tongue, I was going to say, Rebbetzin, you took it apart so you can count if there's actually 613. I was actually going to ask her that. I felt so bad. She must have spent at least an hour, but she did it, I'm sure, with so much love. And you know, it was like love pleasing me, making me happy and showing her appreciation. Anyways, you guys were a great crowd. You know, I could go on for another, hopefully 10, 20 hours, but you guys have a lot of things to do. I hope that we all take some lessons, myself included, from the kind of person that Rebbetzin was. But the most important thing, I think, from all of this is, now that it's a Yortzeit and soon a birthday, I usually try to do more events on a birthday of Hey Other, is just to realize that the Rebbe really was given to us by the Rebbetzin literally with two hands. And literally the Rebbetzin saw the Rebbe within the daytime, like I said before, a half hour. And most of the time that I could remember. That includes even Purim. I think the years I remember, the Rebbe was on 20 minutes for the Suda and ran back to 770. So anyways, we should be zeichet to see the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin become a mamash. I hope that you guys enjoyed. And I don't remember everything I told you guys because I was working off the cuff. So Milchim, if you have another opportunity another time, maybe I'll repeat some of it, maybe not. Hopefully I'll remember some of it or I'll get a chance to listen. Thank you very much. Rebbe Halberstam. I barely recognize him, but it says Shalom Halberstam. I assume it's you. And I remember you had beautiful, beautiful long blonde hair. And I think I was at your Shornes, obviously, because I was at Shalom Zachar as well. And Rebbe Shaf as well. It was a pleasure meeting both of you after such a long time. And we should have the Gula Shleim B'Kor Mamish.
Okay, Shikach Mendel, thank you very, very much for your time. Bochurim, please remain in your seats. Again, thank you very much for your time, for very, very graciously sharing everything with us.
Hold on. Sorry, I forgot. No nice, I don't want to say, I don't want to call Verbringen, so it's hard to find other words. No hangout with Bochurim would be finished if I didn't do a little show and tell. So who's up for a little show and tell with the raise of hands? Two hands. Okay. So first of all, about 48 years ago, the upstairs Zal was rebuilt, the original beautiful tiles that were there, because all the tiles became usgerim. They all got rubbed out, the entire color left. Some of them, but the passages by the doors, became so sharp that Sipoire could have used that, you know, in the midbar for the miller. But one tile in the entire place was saved. No one could explain how, and it was under Doron Kodesh. So when they moved Doron Kodesh and we were breaking up the floor to put a new floor, which is a terrazzo floor now, so this one is a tile that the Rebbe Stutzman, you can see it's pretty thick still. So this one wouldn't work for Tzipoira. Right? So this is a tile that the Rebbe stood Shmonesra most probably 20, 30 years. Imagine what the original tile looked like. You ready? Look at this. So from people pushing at the Fabrengens upstairs, still in the Friedrich Rebbe's days, or before the Rebbe even became Rebbe, and afterwards, can you imagine the difference? And look, even the thickness is like almost half. So that's one thing I thought you would enjoy to see. Look how malchus the kid is. By the way, these tiles were handmade for this doctor who owns 770, and he physically imported it for him, as far as I know, from Italy, and every single one has actually a number on the back. So when the person bought 1,000 tiles, they put numbers. I think this one is like 1130 or something, 1120. So that's one thing I wanted to show. Yeah, I forgot to show you, people keep asking me, what's a macher? When I think that I became a macher. So a macher, this is, I think, like 35 years ago or something, but that's just, so to speak, a regular picture. A macher means that I always had the zchus to help and be in certain places and situations where the rest of the world didn't. So, for example, when Begin came, I was actually in the Rebbe's room for the first half hour. There was like a conference room before he went to what they call Camp David to meet President Carter. I think it was Lamed Zayin, Lamed Ches, I don't remember. And so in the room, I couldn't find pictures where I'm there, but there are some pictures that were published in magazines. You can see here by the arrow, I'm like right behind there, like between the Rebbe and label. This is when the Belzer Rebbe came to see the Rebbe. The Sichos are kind of known. This is another picture, but I'm not in the picture. The Belzer Rebbe came to visit the Rebbe, and that whole, so to speak, Yechidus was actually open to, not to the public, but to the Belzer Rebbe's entourage and to the machers and the Yechidus Gula, So I think you can easily see which one is me. Let me switch the screen. So yeah, so now it's maybe a little bit better. Can you see which one I am? I think you can see with the wire in my mouth. So I was helping Chaim Baruch Halberstam record the conversation. So you see my hand is with a microphone next to the Belzer Rebbe to hear the Rebbe, the way they were sitting. Because the picture here is upside down because of the Zoom, it comes upside down. But you can see I'm there between the label and Binyamin, or Rabbi Groner and Rabbi Klein with the wire in my mouth. So I got the...
we can see it perfect.
One last item I'm going to show. And all of this is in safes, either in the bank here or in New York. So if you guys have any ideas, don't even try it. So on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, Al Yiporad Adam Mechaver Elam Tech Dvar Halacha. So, by the way, just a few things that I know, and I always use the same Amor Chazal. I don't want to get you any wrong impression that you're talking to or listening to some shtickle lamden. But in any case, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, because of Sfeke de Yoime, we use a Pri Chodesh on the second night. But the Rebbe had a different level. So the Rebbe, when he was making Shechiyanu, either in the Kiddush, but also by the Tkiyah Shofar, the Rebbe wanted to have what you would call a Beged Chodesh. So every year, a new one would be made, a scarf would be made for the Rebbe, every year a new one. And apparently, that's what the Rebbe wanted to have a Beged Chodesh. So they would basically take a huge piece of material. And by the way, the Rebbetzin sister made this, just for the record. They take a huge piece of material. It's pretty big. I would say it's 2 feet by 2 feet. And if you pay attention, so when you take out a little bit, because, it's Shtiva Erev, the way material is designed, you take out a little fuddim, you take out a little of the thread, it becomes like a scarf. So the Rebbe would put it together like this, right? And you would kind of hide it a little bit in the talis and the kittel. I mean, Russian is not kittel, but also with a handkerchief of the tichel, that they call it the red tichel of the Alter Rebbe. It's really not red because they got this color a very long time ago. So here you get to see a little something interesting. Anyways, that's all for the show until now. You guys have been a great crowd. And
thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And Afreilichem Purim. We should not celebrate Beis Shevat, we should celebrate Chofei Odeh, the Korah Mamish.
Thank you, Mendel. Time.